Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the intermediate section of Hey to G'day. Today we'll be speaking about what people get wrong about Australia. If this episode is too hard for you, please let us know. Or if it's too easy, please also let us know. Or also check out our beginner episode on this topic or the advanced episode on this topic as well. So, the first point we have here that people commonly get wrong about Australia is the dangerous wildlife everywhere. People from overseas commonly have this perception that there is dangerous wildlife everywhere you look. However, I don't personally think this is the case. What do you think about this topic, George?
G'day, Luke.
Hello.
So, people often say that there is lots of dangerous wildlife everywhere. When I was in Europe late last year, many people said they hadn't been to Australia and would never go because they're scared of the wildlife, the spiders, the redback spiders, the snakes. I think we have 4 of the most deadly snakes in the world in Australia. And the crocodiles were another one that came up a lot. But if you live in the city, and most people do live in the cities, we are from Melbourne.
Yes.
You won't see much of that at all. Maybe you'll see a snake near the river, the Yarra River in Melbourne.
Yeah.
That's not very common. I've never seen a snake there. And if you want to see crocodiles, you can go up north to Queensland or Northern Territory. But once again, they're not on the road attacking you. They're not close to us. And there's also way less spiders than you would think, I would say. When I was in Ghent in Belgium, shout out Ghent, I had to deal with like a huge spider. It was about this big if you're watching on YouTube, and it was one of the biggest spiders I've seen in years, and I did find it funny that I was told to deal with this as an Australian. But yeah, it's definitely not true. So Luke, people think that Australia is not very multicultural, so there's not people from different countries here. And people also think everyone is a surfer. What do you think about this?
Well, George, I think it's not true. Firstly, we have a lot of multiculturalism in Australia, especially where we are from in Melbourne. It's quite common to see people who are from different ethnic backgrounds. We're quite used to this. It's not anything out of the ordinary. There's actually a statistic that we're able to find, and around 30% of Australians that currently live in Australia were born overseas. So that just shows the amount of multiculturalism we have in our country, which I think is great. Some of the common ethnic groups in Australia, for example, the Chinese, Indian, and Vietnamese. And in terms of everyone being a surfer, that's also not the case. I think I've surfed once in my life, and I was not very good, and I'm definitely not a surfer. I don't think you are either, George. Is that correct?
I cannot surf, and I actually do spend a lot of time at the beach, but still I cannot surf, which I am embarrassed about.
That's very interesting, George. I think our surfing abilities are probably pretty similar, which is not very good. So another common misconception about Australia that people get wrong is that Vegemite is extremely popular and that everyone eats Vegemite. George, do you want to tell us what exactly is Vegemite to the audience?
Yes, so Vegemite is a spread, so you usually use a knife to put it on bread. And basically it's quite a salty a thing that people eat, and many people when they come to Australia will try Vegemite, and maybe they'll buy some for their family back home.
Mhm.
But I never ever eat Vegemite, and I think most people don't eat Vegemite. But Luke, you're a big fan.
I'm a big fan of Vegemite. I often see videos online of people from overseas testing out Vegemite for themselves. However, they consume the Vegemite without putting it on bread, which it's not going to taste good having it that way. It needs to be put on bread, preferably toast is my preference. So toasted bread in the toaster. And I enjoy having this probably 1 or 2 times per week for breakfast, I'd say.
And Luke, people think that kangaroos are everywhere in Australia. Like they're just on the street, in the cities. Like you can't leave your house without running into them. But this is not true. And I've actually heard some people say that they thought that we ride kangaroos to school, which
Yep.
is definitely not true. But can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, firstly, I wish it was true. That would be pretty cool, riding a kangaroo to work or to school. Um, but in reality, kangaroos are not everywhere. You will not see a kangaroo in a city, for example. However, in the countryside, not that far away from the city, maybe in Melbourne, 30 to 40 minutes out from the CBD, you might be able to see some kangaroos. And that is pretty cool, especially to a foreigner, but they're certainly not everywhere.
And this is important to note. A lot of people won't drive at dusk. So dusk is when the sun is going down beyond, like down below the horizon, or at dawn when the sun is coming up, the sun is rising. And that is because the kangaroos are most active at night in the countryside, and you can actually maybe hit them, or they might jump into your car, and they are quite strong animals. But so that is something that people are actually quite conscious of here.
Yep, it can be quite dangerous, for sure. Now, the next point we have here, as another misconception people get wrong about Australia, is that it's very hot in the whole country all the time. I think you would agree with me here, George, that that's not true.
That is not true. If you're watching the YouTube, we're both wearing long pants.
Yeah.
I had the heater on last night, and I was quite cold this morning. Melbourne in winter gets cold. Melbourne is in Victoria, the state of Victoria, and Victoria has a bit of snow during the winter. But Australia, the desert, which is when you go further inland, the desert is very, very hot throughout the whole year. And as you go further up to Queensland or Northern Territory, it does get quite hot throughout. But in Melbourne, it rains each year about 140 days per year. So, yeah, lots of rain here. So it's definitely not too hot. If you are visiting Melbourne, make sure to bring a jumper and some warm pants if it's in winter.
Yep, that is really important and a good tip for any traveller coming to Melbourne.
Cool. So that wraps up episode number 2 for the intermediate section. Again, if that was too difficult, check out beginner. It's a lot slower, easier words. If it was too easy, check out advanced, which is really just a normal conversation that we would have about this topic.
Yeah.
But if you did enjoy the episode, please give us 5 stars for the podcast, or a like on YouTube, or a subscribe. It really means a lot. And if you want to have the transcripts for free, there is a link in the description. And if you want to, like, we have a Q&A section each week where we'll answer your questions. So if you want to get in contact with us, there is also a link in the description, or you can write us a comment on YouTube. But thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.